Elena Martinez knelt beside the small blue flower that grew between the rocks. She had never seen anything like it before. The petals seemed to glow in the morning sunlight that filtered through the pine trees. She carefully placed the flower in her collection bag and made notes in her journal. This was why she loved her work as a plant scientist. Every day brought new discoveries in places like Pine Ridge. The mountain village was perfect for her research. Only 300 people lived there, and they had been kind to her and her team. The villagers brought them fresh bread and milk every morning. Children would peek around corners to watch the scientists work with their strange equipment. Elena had been studying the unique plants that grew in these mountains for 6 months now. Her team of 4 other researchers had found dozens of new species. The morning air was crisp and clean. Elena could hear birds singing in the trees above her. She loved these quiet moments before her team woke up. Dr. Marcus Bell would soon be complaining about the cold coffee. Lisa Morgan would be organizing their equipment with military precision. Jake Sullivan would be making jokes that nobody found funny. Rebecca Foster would be buried in her books, reading about mountain ecosystems. Elena stood up and stretched her back. She was getting older, and sleeping in a tent for months was hard on her body, but this research was important. The plants in these mountains might hold secrets that could help people. Some of them seemed to resist disease better than plants in other places. Others grew in soil that should not support life. Elena believed nature always had answers if people were smart enough to ask the right questions. She walked deeper into the cave system that she had been exploring for the past week. The caves went far underground, and she had found several plants that grew without sunlight. These cave plants were her most exciting discovery. They seemed to get energy from minerals in the rock instead of from the sun. If she could understand how they did this, it might change how people thought about life itself. The cave was dark and cool. Elena used her flashlight to examine the walls. Strange moss covered the rocks in some places. She took samples carefully, making sure not to damage the delicate plants. Science required patience and respect for the subjects being studied. Her professor had taught her that 20 years ago, and she still believed it. As she worked deeper in the caves, Elena lost track of time. This often happened when she was absorbed in her research. The plants were so unusual that she forgot about everything else. She was examining a particularly interesting fungus when she heard a sound that did not belong in the mountains. It was a humming noise, low and steady. Elena stopped working and listened carefully. The sound was coming from above, from outside the cave. It grew louder as she listened. Elena had heard many aircraft over the years, but this sound was different. It had a strange quality that made her feel uneasy. The humming became a roar. Elena dropped her samples and ran toward the cave entrance. As she ran, the ground began to shake. Dust fell from the cave ceiling. The roar outside became so loud that Elena had to cover her ears. She had never heard anything so powerful. When she reached the cave entrance, Elena saw something that changed her life forever. The sky was full of ships unlike anything she had ever seen. They were made of what looked like crystal or glass, and they reflected the sunlight in beautiful but terrifying ways. The ships were huge, each one the size of a city block. There were dozens of them hovering over Pine Ridge. Elena watched in horror as beams of light shot down from the crystal ships. The beams hit the village buildings and they simply disappeared. Not burned or destroyed, but completely gone, as if they had never existed. The village school vanished first, then the general store, then the houses where her friends lived. She tried to run toward the village to help, but the ground shook so violently that she fell. More beams shot down from the ships. Elena could see people running in the streets, but the beams moved too fast. When the light touched them, they vanished just like the buildings. Elena screamed, but her voice was lost in the terrible noise. From the ships, the attack lasted only minutes, but to Elena it felt like hours. She lay on the ground outside the cave, unable to move, unable to look away from the destruction. The crystal ships methodically destroyed everything in Pine Ridge. They moved their beams in patterns, making sure nothing survived. Elena realized this was not random violence. This was systematic extermination. When the ships finished their work, they rose higher into the sky. Elena could see that Pine Ridge was completely gone. Where the village had stood, there was only bare earth. Even the trees had been removed. The ground looked like it had been scraped clean by a giant hand. The ships hung in the air for a few more minutes, as if admiring their work. Then they disappeared into the clouds. Elena lay on the ground for a long time after the ships left. She could not process what she had seen. An entire village had been erased in minutes. Her research team was gone. The friendly villagers who had brought her bread were gone. The children who had watched her work were gone. Everything was gone except the empty earth and herself. Eventually, Elena forced herself to stand up. Her body felt strange, as if she was moving through water instead of air. She walked to where Pine Ridge had been, hoping to find survivors, hoping to find anything. But there was nothing. The ground was smooth and clean, as if the village had never existed. Even the roads were gone. Elena fell to her knees in the empty space where the village had been. She understood now that she had witnessed something beyond human experience. These crystal ships were not from Earth. They were from somewhere else, somewhere far away. And they had come to Earth to kill people. As the sun set that day, Elena made a promise to the empty ground where her friends had died. She would find out who had done this. She would learn everything about these crystal ships and the creatures that flew them. And somehow she would make them pay for what they had done to Pine Ridge. Elena walked for 3 days before she found help. Her legs were weak and her mind kept playing the attack over and over. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw the crystal ships and the beams of light that had erased Pine Ridge when a military helicopter finally spotted her. Elena was barely conscious. The soldiers who found her thought she was crazy. She kept talking about crystal ships and missing villages, but when they flew over the area where Pine Ridge had been, they found nothing unusual. The ground looked like it had always been empty. The military doctor said Elena was suffering from trauma and hallucinations. He wanted to put her in a hospital for treatment, but Elena knew what she had seen. She demanded that someone check satellite pictures of the area. She insisted that Pine Ridge had existed, that hundreds of people had lived there. The military officials were patient with her at first, but they clearly thought she was having a mental breakdown. Everything changed when Lieutenant Patricia Kane arrived. Kane was an intelligence officer who specialized in unusual incidents. She had been investigating strange reports from around the world. Reports of missing towns, unexplained crater formations, and sightings of unknown aircraft. Kane listened to Elena's story carefully and asked detailed questions. Kane showed Elena satellite images from the past year. There were dozens of places around the world where towns and villages had simply vanished. The satellite pictures showed populated areas one day and empty ground the next. Government agencies had been covering up these incidents, calling them natural disasters or equipment malfunctions. But Kane believed something else was happening. Elena felt relief when she realized that someone finally believed her. Kane explained that the disappearances followed a pattern. The missing settlements were all located above valuable mineral deposits. Someone or something was harvesting Earth's resources and removing any humans who lived nearby. The crystal ships Elena had seen were part of a systematic invasion. Kane brought Elena to a secret military facility hidden in the desert. The base was filled with scientists and soldiers working on what they called the Earth Defense Initiative. Elena met Dr. Marcus Bell, a physicist who had been studying recovered alien technology. She also met Captain Jake Sullivan, a pilot who had survived an encounter with the crystal ships, and Dr. Rebecca Foster, an expert on xenobioogy. The team showed Elena pieces of wreckage from a crystal ship that had crashed in the ocean. The ship was made of a material that seemed to be part machine and part living organism. The crystal structures were harder than diamond, but also flexible like muscle tissue. Elena had never seen anything like it in her studies of Earth biology. Dr. Bell explained that the aliens called themselves the Kethver. They were silicon-based life forms. Unlike the carbon-based life of Earth, their bodies were made of living crystal that could change shape and function. The Kethver saw organic life as inferior and viewed humans as nothing more than pests to be exterminated. Elena studied the alien materials with growing fascination. Her background in plant biology gave her unique insights into how the Kethver structures worked. She noticed that the crystal formations had patterns similar to the cell structures of certain plants. The aliens grew their technology the same way that plants grew leaves and stems. Working day and night, Elena began to understand the Kethver biology. She discovered that their crystal bodies had a fatal weakness. Like all crystal structures, they vibrated at specific frequencies. If someone could generate the right sound waves, they could disrupt the molecular bonds that held the Kethver together. It would be like shattering glass with a high-pitched note. Elena shared her discovery with the research team. Dr. Foster was excited by the possibility, but Dr. Bell pointed out the problems. The weapon would need to generate incredibly precise frequencies, and it would only work at close range. The Kethver ships had powerful shields that would block most attacks from a distance. Captain Sullivan suggested using the weapon in a suicide mission. A human volunteer could carry the device to the Kethver homeworld and activate it there. The explosion would destroy not just the local Kethver, but their entire civilization. Elena immediately volunteered for the mission. The team spent months developing the frequency weapon. Elena worked with the engineers to design a device that could interface with Kethver technology. The plan was to disguise the weapon as damaged alien equipment, something the Kethver would bring back to their homeworld for study. Lieutenant Kane, who had been promoted to general, explained the delivery method. Elena would be placed in suspended animation inside a probe designed to look like space debris. During the next Kethver attack, the probe would slip into the alien ship's hyperspace corridor and follow them home. Elena would wake up in orbit around the alien homeworld, 300 light-years from Earth. Elena knew the mission was almost certainly a one-way trip. The probe had enough life support to keep her alive for a few weeks, but no way to return to Earth. She would have to infiltrate the alien homeworld, plant the weapon, and activate it, knowing that she would die in the explosion. But Elena had made her peace with death months ago when she watched Pine Ridge disappear. The team practiced the mission over and over. Elena learned to use alien technology and studied everything they knew about Kethver society. She trained with special forces soldiers who taught her how to move silently and fight with improvised weapons. She memorized the layout of typical Kethver settlements based on intelligence gathered from crashed ships. Dr. Foster gave Elena a special suit that could mimic Kethver biosignatures. The suit would make Elena appear as a harmless piece of equipment to alien sensors. She also carried a quantum communicator that would let her send messages back to Earth, though the device would only work for a short time before the aliens detected it. As the launch date approached, Elena felt strangely calm. She had found her purpose in the months since Pine Ridge was destroyed. She was no longer just a plant scientist studying mountain flowers. She had become humanity's weapon of revenge, carrying the hopes and anger of an entire species. The night before the mission, Elena sat alone in her quarters and wrote letters to the families of her research team. She told them how their loved ones had died trying to understand the natural world, and how that knowledge would now be used to protect humanity. She promised that their sacrifice would not be forgotten. Elena sealed the letters and prepared for the most important mission in human history. Tomorrow, she would begin the journey that would either save her species or die trying. Either outcome seemed better than living with the memory of Pine Ridge. Elena lay in the cramped probe as Captain Jake Sullivan piloted their stealth ship toward the battle. Through the small window, she could see the city of New Tokyo burning below them. The Kethver fleet had arrived 3 hours ago and was systematically destroying the metropolitan area. Millions of people were dying while Elena waited for the perfect moment to launch. The probe was barely large enough for her body. Elena wore the biomimetic suit that would hide her from alien sensors, and the frequency weapon was built into her equipment pack. She had been injected with drugs that would put her into suspended animation for the journey to the alien homeworld. The drugs made her feel drowsy and disconnected from her body. Sullivan's voice crackled through the communication system. He was nervous but trying to hide it with jokes and casual conversation. Elena appreciated his effort to keep her calm, but she had moved beyond fear. She thought about the children of Pine Ridge and felt only determination. The Kethver had made a mistake when they decided to exterminate humanity. Through the ship's sensors, Elena watched the battle raging below. Human fighter jets attacked the crystal ships, but their weapons had little effect. The alien shields absorbed most impacts, and the few successful hits only scratched the surface. The Kethver ships moved with graceful precision, their beams of light carving through buildings and aircraft with equal ease. General Kane's voice came through the radio from the command center. Intelligence had detected the formation of a hyperspace corridor as more Kethver ships prepared to return home. This was Elena's chance. Sullivan would have to fly directly into the alien formation and release the probe at exactly the right moment. If they missed the window, Elena would drift in empty space until her life support ran out. Elena felt the probe detach from Sullivan's ship. The sudden silence was overwhelming after hours of engine noise. She was alone now, falling toward the Kethver fleet in a device that looked like a piece of broken asteroid. The probe tumbled slowly, and Elena caught glimpses of the crystal ships growing larger in her window. The suspended animation drugs took effect. Just as the probe entered the hyperspace corridor, Elena's last conscious thought was of the blue flower she had been studying when the attack began. She wondered if any of the mountain plants had survived the destruction of Pine Ridge. Then darkness claimed her mind. Elena dreamed during the journey across the galaxy. She dreamed of her childhood home and her parents who had died years before the invasion. She dreamed of her research team and the discoveries they would never make. She dreamed of Earth hanging in space, blue and green and beautiful, while crystal ships circled it like mechanical vultures. The revival process was painful. Elena's body felt stiff and cold as the probe systems brought her back to consciousness. Her throat was dry and her muscles ached from months of suspended animation, but her mind was clear and focused. She was alive, and according to the probe's instruments, she was in orbit around the Kethver homeworld. Elena looked out the window and gasped at what she saw. Kethmara was unlike any planet she had imagined. The entire surface was covered with crystal structures that reached into the atmosphere like frozen lightning. Cities of living glass stretched across continents, their surfaces reflecting the light of twin suns. The planet itself seemed to pulse with energy, as if it was one enormous living organism. The probe's sensors detected thousands of Kethver ships moving between the planet and its moons. Elena realized she was seeing the heart of an interstellar empire. This was not just a homeworld, but the center of a civilization that spanned multiple star systems. The Kethver had been conquering worlds for millennia, and Earth was just their latest target. Elena activated the probe's maneuvering thrusters and began her descent toward the planet. The probe was designed to look like space debris, and the Kethver paid no attention to it. Elena guided the probe toward a landing site near one of the smaller crystal cities. She would have to infiltrate the alien settlement and find a way to deploy her weapon. The landing was rough, but successful. Elena's probe crashed into a crystal forest outside the city, and the impact systems made it look like a natural meteor strike. Elena waited inside the probe for several hours, monitoring alien communications and studying the environment. The Kethver sent a small team to investigate the crash site, but they concluded it was harmless debris and left. Elena carefully emerged from the probe wearing her biomimetic suit. The alien atmosphere was breathable but felt strange in her lungs. The gravity was lighter than Earth's, making her movements feel awkward and unpredictable. Everything around her was made of living crystal that hummed with energy. The crystal forest was beautiful and terrifying. The trees were transparent structures that conducted light and sound through their branches. Elena could hear the Kethver city in the distance, a constant harmony of crystalline voices speaking in frequencies beyond human hearing. She realized that the aliens communicated through vibrations in their crystal bodies. Elena made her way through the forest toward the city. The biomimetic suit worked perfectly, making her invisible to the Kethver sensors she encountered. But Elena had to move carefully because the suit could not hide her footprints or the sound of her breathing. She felt like a ghost haunting an alien world. The city was even more impressive up close. The buildings were grown rather than built, their crystal walls flowing together like frozen water. Elena could see Kethva moving through the structures, their bodies changing shape as they performed different tasks. Some were tall and thin, others short and wide, all of them glowing with internal light. Elena studied the alien movements and behavior patterns. The Kethver seemed to have a rigid social hierarchy based on their crystal formations. The most complex structures belonged to leaders, while simpler forms performed manual labor. Elena noticed that all the aliens moved in harmony, as if they were connected by invisible threads. As she observed the city, Elena began to understand how Kethver society worked. The aliens were not individuals like humans, but parts of a collective consciousness. Their crystal bodies could share thoughts and emotions through direct contact. The entire city was like a single organism with thousands of specialized parts. Elena realized that her frequency weapon would be even more effective than she had hoped. If she could disrupt the harmonic frequencies that connected the Kethver collective, she might destroy not just their bodies but their entire civilization. The aliens had evolved to depend on their shared consciousness, and losing it would be like cutting the nervous system from a living creature. Elena found a hiding place in an abandoned crystal formation and began planning her infiltration of the city center. According to her intelligence briefings, the most important Kethver structures would be located near the planetary core. She would have to go deep underground to find the harmonic chambers that controlled the collective consciousness. The mission was more dangerous than Elena had expected, but she felt more determined than ever. She was not just carrying a weapon to the heart of enemy territory. She was carrying the anger and grief of an entire species, and she would not fail. The Kethver had chosen to exterminate humanity, and now they would learn the price of that decision. Elena spent 2 weeks learning to move like a Kethver. She watched them from her hiding place in the crystal formations, studying how they walked and interacted with their technology. The aliens moved with flowing motions, their crystal bodies adapting to each surface they touched. Elena practiced mimicking these movements until she could navigate the alien city without attracting attention. The biomimetic suit was working better than expected. Not only did it hide Elena from Kethver sensors, but it also allowed her to interface with their technology. When she touched crystal control panels, the suit translated her commands into frequencies the alien machines could understand. Elena felt like she was learning to speak a language made of light and sound. Elena discovered that the Kethver city was built in layers, with the most important structures located deep underground. The surface buildings were just the visible part of a vast complex that extended miles into the planet's core. Elena would have to descend through multiple levels of alien security to reach her target. The first barrier was a harmonic scanner that checked the biosignatures of every Kethver entering the underground levels. Elena approached the scanner, nervously hoping her suit would fool the alien technology. The crystal archway hummed as it examined her, and for a moment Elena thought she had been discovered. But the scanner accepted her false signature and allowed her to pass. Elena found herself in a tunnel system that glowed with internal light. The walls were lined with patterns that hurt her eyes to look at directly. She realized the patterns were actually Kethver writing, but the alien language was too complex for her to understand. Elena followed the main tunnel downward, staying close to the walls and moving slowly. The deeper she went, the more complex the city became. Elena passed laboratories where Kethver scientists worked with materials she did not recognize. She saw manufacturing centers where new crystal structures were being grown like plants. Most disturbing were the data storage areas where Elena glimpsed images of Earth and other conquered worlds stored in crystalline matrices. Elena used her quantum communicator to send reports back to Earth. Though she knew the transmissions would eventually be detected, Dr. Rebecca Foster's voice came through the static, encouraging Elena and providing technical advice. The connection to home made Elena feel less alone in the alien city, but she knew she was running out of time. On her 5th day underground, Elena encountered her first real danger. A HFY security patrol detected an anomaly in the harmonic field around her. Elena's biomimetic suit was good, but it was not perfect. The aliens could sense that something was wrong. Even if they could not identify exactly what it was, Elena hid in an equipment storage area, while the security patrol searched for her. The HFY moved through the tunnels like hunting animals, their crystal bodies resonating with detection frequencies. Elena held her breath and tried to make herself as small as possible. After an hour, the patrol moved on, but Elena knew they would return with better equipment. Elena realized she needed to reach the planetary core quickly before the HFY discovered her presence. She abandoned stealth and began moving faster. Through the tunnel system, the alien architecture became stranger as she descended. The walls curved in impossible directions, and the gravity shifted randomly from surface to surface. Elena finally reached the Great Resonance Chamber after 3 days of dangerous travel. The chamber was enormous, stretching for miles in all directions. At the center was a crystal formation so complex that Elena's mind could not fully process its structure. The formation pulsed with energy that she could feel in her bones. Elena realized she was looking at the heart of HFY civilization. The crystal formation was not just a machine or a building, but a living entity that connected every HFY in the galaxy. Their collective consciousness flowed through this central hub, linking millions of alien minds across dozens of worlds. Destroying this crystal would not just kill the HFY on this planet, but their entire species. Elena felt a moment of doubt as she understood the magnitude of what she was about to do. She would be committing genocide on a scale that humans had never achieved. But then she remembered Pine Ridge and the countless other human settlements that the HFY had erased. The aliens had chosen this path when they decided to exterminate humanity. Elena began preparing her frequency weapon for deployment. The device was designed to interface with HFY technology, and the Great Resonance Chamber provided the perfect amplification system. Elena's weapon would use the aliens' own harmonic network to spread the destructive frequency throughout their civilization. As Elena worked, she became aware that the HFY were closing in on her location. Security patrols were searching every level of the underground complex. Elena could hear their crystalline voices getting closer as they coordinated their hunt. She had perhaps an hour before they found the Great Resonance Chamber. Elena activated her quantum communicator one last time to send a final message to Earth. She told General Kane that the mission was succeeding and that the HFY threat would soon be eliminated. She asked Kane to tell the families of her research team that their loved ones had been avenged. Elena felt at peace knowing that her sacrifice would save her species. The frequency weapon took longer to calibrate than Elena had expected. The HFY harmonic system was incredibly complex, with multiple layers of resonance frequencies. Elena had to adjust her device to match the exact vibrations of the Great Resonance Chamber. One mistake would render the weapon useless. Elena heard the security patrols entering the chamber just as she finished the calibration. The HFY had found her at last. Elena looked up to see dozens of alien figures moving toward her across the crystal floor. Their bodies glowed with anger and confusion as they tried to understand what the strange creature was doing in their most sacred space. Elena stood up and faced the approaching aliens. She was no longer hiding or running. She was Dr. Elena Martinez, survivor of Pine Ridge, and she had come to deliver humanity's final judgment on the HFY race. Elena placed her hand on the activation control of her frequency weapon and smiled. At the aliens who had destroyed her world, the HFY rushed toward her, but they were too late. Elena had spent months preparing for this moment, and she would not be stopped. She thought of the blue flower she had been studying when the crystal ships first appeared. She thought of her research team and the villagers of Pine Ridge. She thought of all the humans who would live because the HFY would die. Elena pressed the activation control and felt the frequency weapon begin its work. The Great Resonance Chamber started to vibrate with new harmonics that the HFY had never experienced. Elena watched as the aliens stopped their advance, confusion and fear replacing their anger. They could feel their collective consciousness beginning to fracture. Elena had kept her promise to the dead of Pine Ridge. The Kethver would learn that humanity was not a species to be casually exterminated. They would learn this lesson in the last moments of their existence, as their homeworld shattered around them and their civilization died with the frequency of human vengeance. Elena watched the Kethver security forces freeze in place as the frequency weapon began its deadly work. The aliens' crystal bodies started to vibrate in ways they had never experienced before. Their collective consciousness, which had linked them for millions of years, began to crack like glass under pressure. Elena could see fear in their crystalline faces as they realized what was happening to them. The great resonance chamber filled with a sound that was beyond human hearing, but Elena could feel it in her bones. The frequency weapon was working perfectly, using the Kethver's own harmonic network to spread the destructive vibrations throughout their civilization. Every crystal structure on the planet began to resonate with the deadly frequency, and the effect was spreading to other worlds through their quantum communication system. Elena knew she had only minutes before the frequency reached critical levels and destroyed the planet. She wanted to use that time to send a message to the Kethver collective consciousness. Elena activated her biomimetic suit's communication system and linked it to the Great Resonance Chamber. Her voice would be heard by every Kethver in the galaxy during their final moments. Elena spoke clearly and calmly into the alien network. She told them about Pine Ridge, about the peaceful village where she had been studying mountain flowers. She described the children who had watched her work and the families who had brought her fresh bread each morning. Elena wanted the Kethver to understand exactly what they had destroyed when they decided to harvest Earth's minerals. Elena explained that humans were not the primitive pests the Kethver believed them to be. Humans were capable of love and creativity and scientific discovery. They built beautiful cities and created art and music. They cared for their children and helped their neighbors. The Kethver had destroyed all of that when they erased Pine Ridge from existence. Elena told the aliens that their extinction was not random violence but justice. Humanity had studied Kethver biology and technology until they found a weakness. Humans had built a weapon specifically designed to destroy crystal-based life forms. A single human woman had traveled across the galaxy to deliver that weapon to the heart of Kethver civilization. This was the price of genocide. As Elena spoke, she could feel the planet beginning to shake. The frequency weapon was destabilizing the molecular bonds that held Kethmora together. Cracks appeared in the crystal walls of the Great Resonance Chamber. The Kethver security forces fell to the floor as their bodies lost structural integrity. Their collective consciousness was dissolving into chaos and pain. Elena continued her message even as the world crumbled around her. She told the Kethver that humanity would remember this day forever. Children on Earth would learn about the aliens who tried to destroy their species and the scientists who stopped them. The story of Pine Ridge and Dr. Elena Martinez would become a warning to any other species that might threaten humanity in the future. Elena felt a strange sense of completion as she delivered her final words to the dying aliens. She had carried the anger and grief of her entire species across the galaxy. Now she was transforming that pain into something that would protect future generations. Elena had become more than a scientist or a soldier. She had become the instrument of human justice. The frequency weapon reached critical resonance and Elena felt the planet begin to tear itself apart. The Great Resonance Chamber cracked open like an eggshell, exposing the molten core beneath. Elena looked up through the opening and saw the crystal cities on the surface collapsing into rubble. The twin suns of Kethmora seemed to flicker as the planet's gravitational field destabilized. Elena activated her quantum communicator one final time to send a message back to Earth. She told General Kane that the mission was complete and the Kethver threat was eliminated. Elena asked Kane to make sure that the families of her research team knew their loved ones had not died in vain. She wanted the world to remember that science and determination could overcome any enemy. As Kethmora died around her, Elena thought about all the discoveries she would never make. She thought about the plants she would never study and the students she would never teach. But Elena felt no regret about her choice. She had used her knowledge and skills to save her species, and that was more important than any personal ambition. Elena felt the frequency weapon's vibrations in her own body as the destruction spread beyond the planet. Her biomimetic suit was based on Kethver technology, and it was beginning to resonate with the deadly frequency. Elena realized she would die with the aliens, but she had expected that from the beginning. This was always a one-way mission. Through her quantum communicator, Elena could hear celebrations beginning on Earth as the Kethver fleets across the galaxy suddenly went silent. The alien ships were losing power and crashing as their crews died from the resonance frequency. The invasion of Earth was over, and humanity had won a victory that would echo through history. Elena smiled as she felt her life fading away with the destruction of Kethmora. She had kept every promise she made in the ruins of Pine Ridge. The aliens who had murdered innocent people were dead. Humanity was safe from the Kethver threat. And Elena had proven that humans should never be underestimated by their enemies. Captain Lisa Morgan detected the massive subspace explosion from Earth as Kethmora shattered like crystal in a sonic boom. The destruction was so complete that it created gravitational waves that could be measured across the galaxy. Elena had not just destroyed a planet, but had collapsed an entire star system. The Kethver homeworld and its moons were gone, replaced by an expanding cloud of crystalline dust. The war was over in minutes. Every Kethver in the galaxy died simultaneously as their collective consciousness was severed. Their ships drifted powerless through space, their crews reduced to inert crystal formations. The species that had conquered dozens of worlds was extinct, destroyed by a single human woman who refused to let genocide go unpunished. Elena Martinez had started her journey as a plant scientist studying mountain flowers. She ended it as the savior of humanity and the destroyer of an alien empire. Her name would be remembered for as long as humans traveled among the stars. And somewhere in the ruins of space, in the dust that had once been Kethmora, the echo of her final message continued to resonate. Humanity was not a species to be trifled with. Elena had proven that the most dangerous creature in the universe was not the largest or the strongest or the most technologically advanced. It was the one that refused to give up, that turned its pain into purpose, and that would cross the galaxy for revenge. The Kethver had learned this lesson too late. In the final moments before their civilization died with the sound of human determination,